Hey, gang, and welcome to another episode of Try Not to Curse. This is a special one for me, y'all. I have been following this comedian for quite some time on the TikToks. TikTok is great for exposing us to new and incredible talent, and my guest has an abundance of that. Jason Salmon is here with us. It's spelled salmon,
It is, yeah.
and you don't want to just go with salmon. I think
N-
that's fun.
It's fun and it's phonetic. And since we live in a digital world, I should go with the thing that's easiest to spell. But we always pronounced it Solomon.
That's fine.
And
I
so
understand.
I decided I was just going to stay true to that. I'm just going to pretend I'm British till the end of my life.
Okay, hey, you know
Yeah,
what? There are worse things, that's for sure.
right.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining me. This is awesome. And when I reached out to you, I mean, I've reached out to a couple people on socials and things, not expecting to get any type of response at all. And the fact that you even answered me back, let alone am on the show, is I'm so thankful. But you live in New York City now,
I do.
correct?
Yeah.
You've been there for, well, I think you said like 8 years or so.
No, I've been
No, okay.
here almost 20 years.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's been a
Okay.
while. Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you moved up here 20 years ago, was that in the pursuit of stand-up comedy? Was it just looking for something new or
It was with a job. I actually I went to school for engineering and
Oh, okay.
yeah, got a job out of school that took me to New Jersey. I didn't have any friends, I didn't have any, so it was just sort of I was away from everything. So
Yeah.
started taking acting classes to meet women.
There you go. Okay.
And I mean, yeah, you got to work with your social skill sets and
Sure.
mine was like, hey, I'm going to perform and we'll see if that works. So yeah, I started and I sort of it clicked. I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I also hated my job, so that helped a lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Well, so were you always interested in performing? Where did you grow up? Let's start there.
I grew up in Allen, Texas, a
Okay.
small town north of Dallas, and it's not small anymore, but I grew up with Allen, Texas. That was sort of the cool thing, is like it was small when I was small, and as I got bigger, it got more, there was more stuff to do. So it was sort of
Yeah.
but yeah, I performed, I did musical theater, I sang in the choir, I always did stuff. I did plays at church and I always performed, but I never knew exactly, that never was a viable option to
Okay.
me in my
Yeah.
world. I was just like, oh, that's a thing that you do as a hobby while you get an engineering degree,
Right.
while you go to a real job with
Right.
where you do numbers and have a desk, that was my whole. So I just assumed it was just playing around.
Sure.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
And so, what was it about the engineering job that you turned around and you said, again, you packed up your whole life, you moved to a place that's just as unfamiliar, I mean, you feel like an alien landing in the East Coast and you're all, like you said, you're all alone.
Yeah.
So, you made this big sacrifice for this job and then, oh no, it turned out to not be all it was cracked up to be.
I sort of made the sacrifice for the job. I'm a very inertia type person. Like I'll continue doing the same thing over and over. And I would have stayed in Texas forever. I enjoyed Texas. I was close to my family. But I was like, I think I need to like take a job that might push me out of Texas.
Okay.
So I was interviewing, and when I was interviewing, and also as I was interviewing, I was like, I don't know that this is what I want to do with my life. I was going through that realization, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh no. So
What have I done?
yeah, so I sort of pushed myself out of Texas. The job was more of a medium to do that and not an
Sure.
end because I will say going into that job, I was 50-50 on whether I was going to stay at that job, stay in that occupation. Just nothing interested me about it
Mm,
other than the fact that it was a job and it
right.
would push me out of my comfort zone. So
Right.
it's a self-awareness enough to know that and I wasn't enough of a risk taker to do that on my own, but I knew I would benefit from it. So,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So again, and also, I don't know that the first thought for me, how do I meet people? Oh, let me join an acting group. Was
Well,
that
it helps that I'm terrible at bars. Uh,
okay?
or I'm not like I've never been a heavy drinker, so like bars are not the perfect place for me
Sure.
because but like clubs, like anywhere where there's a low drone, my voice will get drowned out.
That's fair.
So I'm yelling. And so like even if that somehow comes across as attractive, it uh, by the end, like when you see me in a normal thing, you're like, why are you talking so slowly? And
Right.
why are you so relaxed? It's like, it's because I'm not in a state of survival, So yeah, so I just was sort of like, the best way for me to meet people was always just doing fun stuff. And
Yeah.
so I thought, all
Something
right,
different.
yeah.
Yeah. So where did the stand up come up? Just
So
you, you
I ended up becoming an actor, and I did a lot of acting stuff before. I did theater in New Jersey and in New York, and I did commercial, and I did a little bit of little things on TV, and just little bits and pieces here, like not enough to
yeah.
really call it a career, but enough to say that I'm an actor. I've been paid
Right.
for this, and I've had my equity card through
Yeah,
theater
get you
and
in the
stuff.
union. Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, I had shot a Budweiser commercial that had like, I had shot it in Prague. So like
Oh,
I had this sort of like, ooh, I've done a thing that people are like,
yeah.
ooh, that's cool. That's, so it was fun. But I was doing improv. I had done stand up, or I not stand up. I had done sketch and theater and TV and film and improv and short form improv and I was finally like I was like, "Oh, if I'm gonna be consider myself a New York performer, I need to be on stage just naked with just me, just my words, my ideas,
Yeah.
no crutches, nothing to hold on to, nothing to cover me, just all me, raw.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to experience that on some level. And I didn't know if it was going to be stand up or if it was going to be one man show or if it was, because I was probably at that point, I was more equipped to do a one man show than I was to do stand up because I had written a play or two, and so I had more experience with that. But I went to an open mic for stand up, and terrified me. I was awful. But I wasn't the worst person there because in New York City, some open mics are just like there's people who ask you for money on the streets that are trying to get a meal, but I legitimately think there are people who ask you for money on the streets in New York City or is like, I want to go do an open mic later on. I want to pay $3 to get 3 minutes on stage because
Wow.
there was legitimately some mental health issues at
Mm,
play
okay.
in some of the performers. And I was like, all right. So I'm not going to be the worst. But it scared me enough that I didn't do it for another year.
Okay.
So literally on the anniversary of my first attempt at it, I started. I actually tried it again. I was like, all right, there's an itch. There's something
Yeah.
there. I'm still
Yeah.
not good, but but there's an itch that I can try.
Well, for anyone who's ever, I mean, because Lord knows we all have those people in our lives that are always told, "Oh, you're so funny," or "Oh, you should do this, you should pursue that. You've got to tell these stories to somebody." What makes a good stand-up performance? I mean, how do you know that you've gotten better, that you've grown? I mean, is it just based on the audience response? Is it how comfortable you are? Is it how well you memorize I mean, to me, I'll never be on stage. I don't even do karaoke for Christ's sake. Like
Yeah.
I don't get into all of that. But it's really interesting to me to hear comedians because comedians do talk about that. Oh, I started off, I was atrocious and nobody laughed and they booed me off stage. And
Hmm.
so what do you do to go from mediocre amateur to feeling comfortable, feeling like, okay, I've got something here, I'm going to keep going with it?
Well, there's a lot of comedians will take a class. A lot of people I know started by taking a class that was very much about the structure and how to write a joke, and I did not do that. And I I got a nickname early on because I would do, 3 or 4 open mics a week. I would go and just get on stage and talk about things that were funny and try to make a funny story. And I was a funny person. Like
Mm,
I don't have a problem being funny in conversation, and I can do that conversationally
yeah.
fairly easy. But I had a real hard time directing that into a stand-up set. And finally, and I had watched a ton of stand-up and I'd really studied it and I'd written a lot of stuff and I had a lot of interesting ideas. They called me the premise generator at one point because I just had hundreds of premises and no real jokes.
Okay.
So people were like, "Oh, it's a funny idea, but you didn't land anywhere." So one of my buddies, a friend of mine, Luke Younger, he was one of the guys who got me to start going to more open mics regularly. And we sat at a diner one night and we just talked over this joke I had had that was just a funny idea, but it wasn't really taking shape. And we basically crafted that into my first joke
Okay.
that night. We went through it and we're like, okay, well, this is more interesting. He was like, this is more interesting than what you're doing with it. So what if you did this? And then we just sort of, yeah, I met him in an improv class. So we sort of improvised into my first bit. We sort of played with the idea of it.
Yeah.
And once I did that first joke and once I performed it on stage a couple of times, suddenly it all clicked. And all of this work I had been doing that had not been able to meld together. So it's like somebody found me the epoxy that was going to put it all as a single unit.
Yeah.
And, within a month, I had 5 minutes of solid stand up I could play with. So everybody's got a different way to figure it out. And the difficulty with stand up is that there's a precision to it that needs to be so good that it feels nonchalant.
Right.
And it's sort of like a poetry. It's like poetry. When you look at poetry, you're like, this person wrote 100 words. And you're like, that looks like no work at all. But then
Right.
you read
Yeah.
through it and you're like, oh, every word carries this weight and this connection and the precision of comedy is very much like the precision of poetry. I always say comedy is just poetry for people who prefer to laugh more than cry. So
There you go. Yeah.
it's basically what it is. It's like the brevity, the least amount of superficial items to create the most ethereal item, which is laughter in this case.
Yeah. And would you classify yourself as like an observational comic? Because I feel like you do, you on the set that I saw, a couple of things that I see you do online. I know
Yeah.
you have like the recap of the week, like this is what's been going on in the news, let's talk
Yes.
about it. Um, do you kind of tend to get your stuff from like what's going on at the moment? Or, like some comics, like Nate Bargatze, for example, very good about talking about his childhood, his
Yeah.
family,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Whereas you kind of, you'll go into a little bit about politics, you'll go into a
hmm
little bit about, your life in New York City and that kind of thing. What would you say is kind of like your underlying theme for your shows?
I would say, I mean, I there's a storytelling element to it. There's an observational element to it. I mean, if you're going to be observational in today's day and age, you're going to have to acknowledge politics on
Yeah.
some level. The political thing was just that I just tend to talk about things I find absurd, and sometimes politics is the
Yeah.
most absurd thing, and
Yeah,
so
I think
that's
you started off the set because this was now a little maybe 2 months ago. I think you
uh-huh.
started off the set by saying like, well, our two daddies are getting a divorce. It's not your fault. Like
Yes,
you kept,
yeah,
listen, gang, it's not your
yeah.
fault. And I mean, that
That
right
was
there, that's just a great way to start off everything. Because
yeah, that
I
was the
mean,
Elon and
yeah,
Trump divorce
yeah,
proceedings. Yeah, that it's funny because it's silly. I find most of life we take more seriously than we have to. And
Sure.
I think, and I think politics is the hyperbole version of that. It's these people telling you my backstory is this, and I'm a hero because of this, and you're like, you are an idiot, you know?
Right.
But that's what politics is geared for. It's geared for people to be these bombastic, intolerable. I'm like most politicians, you watch them speak and you're just like, I would hate to be near you at a party, you know?
Right.
It
Right.
just not there's such insincerity to it. And I think absurdism plays into it. Now, I wouldn't consider myself an absurdist comment, but I would think I'm observational of the absurdism of the world. Is
Yeah.
more. I think things are funny and I think I think I know I'm the cause of some of the idiocy that I see, So, I fully admit that I'm culpable in it.
Yeah. I mean, well, thankfully, I mean, obviously it's just gotten progressively worse in my opinion, but thankfully politics will you guys comedians will always have some type of material
Yeah.
whether you want it or not, but
I would
it's all
love to
it's
not. I would love to not
love
have
to
any
talk about other
material.
things. Yeah.
Oh, I would love to just sit down and discuss hash browns for an hour. But it's weird.
Now, I will say for my fans, the audience that may not have heard of you or seen any of your work, you are a clean comedian, which I think is very rare these days. Was that a choice? Is that just who you are as a person? You've never been, prone to really like swearing or saying anything particularly crude. You're just being you on stage, or is that a choice that you've made?
It's mostly me. I mean, I don't have anything against swearing. I mean, I played sports, so
Yeah,
I
sure.
have sworn, I have said things to other human beings that are vile and terrible. All in the name of sports,
Right, that's right.
which is just you get to be this
Yeah,
weird
you get a pass.
psychotic version of
Yeah,
yourself.
it's the
I
testosterone.
also wouldn't, run and slam somebody to the ground in a normal world situation, but in a
Sure.
football game, you're a hero when you do that. So.
Right.
Yeah, so but no, I generally speaking, that's me. I'm fairly clean. I got nothing against. I think some of my favorite comics in the world are filthy, filthy people. Oh yeah, they just so yeah, they swear so much. But it's great. Like I think it's a form of language, and I think my form of language is more of a Nate Bargatze. It's more of a like I'm just trying to figure this out, just
Mm,
sort of stepping back and going, I don't know. And
right.
I'm not I found that I don't operate well as an angry comic, like if I'm irritated about something, I need to process through it before I put it on stage,
Sure.
most of the time. I think that's a huge part of becoming a stand-up is finding your voice. Because I would say that Nate Bargatze is the person I would point many comics to. I'm like, if you got to see somebody who knows their voice so
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
this man knows his voice.
Yeah. And I'll say he comes off as very self-deprecating, but not like in a whiny way, just
Yeah,
more of just like, yeah, I'm an idiot. And
yeah.
there's just something really endearing about it. And I've seen him live. Of course
Hmm.
I've seen all of his specials. I'm such a huge fan of Nate's, but he's still fairly new as far as, going mainstream and
Right,
becoming a
right.
household name. But again, he's doing it. He's also a clean comic, as we've said, and I just think he's a really fresh voice because again, he also kind of tends to stay away from the controversial subjects. Again, he mainly
Yes,
just talks about
yes.
his family life, how his wife is essentially the man of the family, about
Yeah,
how I know his one big bit is about how his dad's been addicted to Afrin nose spray
yeah,
for the better of 45 years, that
yeah,
kind of thing. And you would think these are all kind of mundane topics, but to, like you said, he has found his voice, the way he talks about it, the way he tells these stories. You just can't help but end up just in tears, just laughing, it's just so
yeah.
brilliant. I again, anyone who hasn't heard of Nate, please, I encourage you to
Yeah,
watch him too.
I
It's
may have actually seen him blow up. I may have been at the show that sort of launched his career.
amazing,
Yeah,
amazing.
I was just starting in comedy when he was starting to move his way up right before he
Mm,
got his Comedy Central. And I was at an audition for the Comedy Central specials,
okay.
and he blew the roof off of that place. I mean, and it was, and I had seen him perform before the same set or a similar set
Yeah.
and be, okay. But I remember before I'd seen him and the audience wasn't as fully into it as this one was. And I was like, this guy knows his voice. I remember
Mm,
thinking that. I'm like, this guy knows who he is. He is so quintessentially himself and nobody else.
yeah.
And because you're in New York City and you'll see comics all the time because
Sure,
there's
yeah.
so many comics that come through here that you'll be like, oh, you're sort of doing this other comic style, and because you're watching masters all the time in New York City. That's one of the things
Yeah.
about this city is every day I go up and the person going up before me or the person going up after me is somebody I need to learn from, it's great, but it's also, highly competitive. And the fact is most of us like each other, and that's also
Yeah.
a really nice thing. But I watched Nate go up and just it doing that same set that had done moderate on a previous night just destroy on this night. And I'm like, oh, when it works, that is how it works. And
Yeah.
and from there he got his Comedy Central and then that was his stepping stone. But holy
Yeah.
cow, yeah.
Well, and you didn't grow up with the expectation of becoming a stand-up, becoming a performer. But did you have any comedy influencer? Like, were there any folks that you just really admired growing up that you couldn't get enough of their stuff, that you kind of followed their career?
I liked Carlin a lot. I thought it was interesting because I had a weird connection to stand-up comedy because it wasn't a fabric of my world.
Right, right.
The stand-up comic whose stuff I knew the most was this guy named Mike Warnke, and he is a Christian stand-up comic.
Okay.
And he had he basically his first stand-up album was him sort of telling the story of how he became a Christian because he had been a drug dealer and he had been like literally like a Satanist priest. Like he was like so anti-Christianity.
Wow.
And he sort of got converted in boot camp by these two dudes that were just the nicest two people he'd ever met. And he's like, why? Why are you so nice?
Right.
And it was a really sweet story, but it was really funny. And and it was just, and I remember that's the only time my family and other than I mean, we might have seen stand up here and there, but other than that, that was the only time my family and I sat and listened to a comedy record.
Mm.
And but like I heard, at school, I heard somebody brought in Steve Martin,
Yep.
and so I got a taste of that. Of course, that was when Eddie Murphy's specials came out, and I got a taste of that. And I was just like, there's all these people doing all these, and I was just like, that's just a whole other thing. I don't even know what
Right.
that is. Like I
Right.
couldn't, like if you had told me you could be a stand-up or you could be an angel, I'd be like, I can't do either one, probably, like I'm not qualified, so. Yeah, it was just such a detached thing, but it
Right.
was interesting. But what I did was because both my parents are smart but neither of them I consider to be hysterically funny. Like they
Right.
have senses of humor, a good sense of the humor, but they're not funny people. But there was a dude I went to school with named Brett Hilton, and him and this other guy were just so funny. And I remember watching them and go, I want that. That's what I
Mm.
want. Like
Hmm.
like I don't know if it was self-awareness. Like I saw the really good-looking guys get all the women and I was like, it's not what I want. And I saw the guys who were good football players, but I'm like, they're also 3 inches taller than me and significantly bigger and faster. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, but then I saw these guys being funny, and I was like, that's a thing I can wrap my head around.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I can
that,
relate.
yeah, I think it was the class clowns in my school that piqued my interest in comedy the most.
Sure. Now, do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a sister, a younger sister.
And
Mhm.
is she funny?
Um, Not on purpose. No.
Okay.
No, she's pretty serious. She's not.
Okay.
It's weird.
Okay.
I come from a family that's got a good sense of humor, but is just not actively funny family.
Well, and how did they feel when you, again, you packed up, you moved to take this engineering job, and then you say to them, "Hey, I'm gonna start doing stand-up comedy." What was
Well,
that reaction? Did they say like, "But you're not funny"? Like, did they say,
no, I actually was funny. I was the
yeah,
funny one in our family. I had sort of established this world where suddenly it just sort of clicked, where I could just make things funny. I could just twist everyday things into funny situations. And I had become sort of notedly the funny person in the family.
okay,
So they weren't shocked by that. I didn't, to be fair, I knew that I was going with an engineering job, and my parents were, yeah, I didn't know how they would handle me being an actor.
right,
So I quit my engineering job to become an actor, because I had a traveling acting gig, and and of course hopes and dreams, and I thought, oh well, I'm gonna do this, and then this next thing's gonna blow me up, and then I'm gonna be
right,
famous, and we'll be good.
right.
But I told them that I got a job with an internet startup, which was a lie. But I knew it was a lie that they couldn't ask follow-up questions to,
Sure,
because they
absolutely.
were so boomer, that they would not. They're like, okay, I don't know what either of those words means,
Right, exactly.
but sounds like a job. Sounds like a
Right.
job that exists.
All they care is that you've got stability, you've got a
Yeah.
steady income. That's what matters to
My
them.
mom always said, she's like, you never asked for money, so I never worried about them.
Oh, there you
So
go.
that was always the sort of baseline.
Yeah. And I should have asked, are you full time now? You're just that's what you do. You just full time stand
Yeah,
up or
comedy, acting, performing, writing. I
yeah.
punch up scripts. I do like,
Okay.
yeah, so it's sort of comedy, I guess, is the general notion.
Yeah.
Although the past few acting roles I've gotten have not been comedy at all. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so.
But that's good too, though. It's good to have
No,
a
it's great.
variety and yeah,
Oh, I
not
enjoy it.
just
I enjoy playing
yeah.
drama and Fury
That's
and
awesome.
all those other things.
Yeah, for sure. And what is it again? So again, you came out to the East Coast for work. Do you have any aspirations of going out to LA and trying to do the California thing, or are
Uh,
you're good where you're at?
from a stand-up perspective, New York is the mecca in the world of
Yeah,
comedy, because
yeah.
you can just do so much work in New York. I mean, this past weekend, I think I did 15 spots this weekend, and I was only
Wow,
here 2 days.
that's
So
wild.
yeah, but that's you just get all these repetitions. I mean, it's because comedy for the most part is a workout, it's a training ground. And you get to train so much more here in New York than anywhere. So for
Mm,
comedy, LA is not aspirational.
okay,
In film and TV, LA's got more possibilities, but
right.
it's one of those things where that's not something that I'm like, oh, I want to go to LA. It's like I would be fine going to LA, but
Yeah,
it would be as a function of a job that I got.
right,
So.
right. Okay. And so you were just in Aruba, and I
I was.
foolishly assumed you were on vacation. No, you were working, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes.
And it was a comedy festival.
No, it was there's a buddy of mine who I know from New York comedy, who owns a comedy club out there, and he asked me
Okay.
to come out for the week. So, and I mean, look, most of the time I had so much I had to do, because I've got so much administrative stuff that I'm doing with
Mm,
trying to get tour dates and all these things. But I had a lot of work, but it was a vacation. I mean, you're staying at a resort, you wake up, you have your coffee, you can go right out to the pool if you want,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
it's
let
yeah,
me
not
let
the
me ask
worst.
you about just the boring aspect of it, the ins and outs of that. So, again, being a full-time stand-up, I'm assuming you're getting paid decently well enough that to keep you there and you're not looking for part-time work or anything like that. But for something in that kind of situation, so you've got to fly down to Aruba, you're staying in a resort, how much of that is on your dime? How much of that is are they covering as a, thanks for doing this for us? I mean, what is that? What is a show kind of, what does it look like as far as income is concerned, and what you're taking care of on the back end as well?
Yeah, I mean, they do it different ways. Like, with this one, they flew me down, they put me up in a place, they paid me for the shows I did. So, short of, the guy who owned the place took me out to dinner one night. It was, I mean, like, it's not, but usually it's some version of they're going to put you up. They might fly you down, whatever the case is, but if they're not flying you there, they're paying you enough to cover your flight there.
Okay,
So
okay,
it is but yeah, generally speaking, you're going somewhere, they're paying you for the shows that you do, and then you're getting lodging.
right.
So that's a lot of what it is.
Yeah, but in a situation like you said earlier with an open mic, sometimes you have to pay the venue to get a
Yes, I,
spot.
I
Okay,
realized when I said that, I was like, that's sort of unique to New York because New
okay.
York is such a mecca of comedy. There are a lot of free open mics that you can go to, but what I found is when I was doing open mics, you could get more time
Hmm.
on the microphone, which I felt like was more valuable to me than waiting around. You go to a free open mic, you might be there for 2 hours
Right.
waiting to get up. If I go to an open mic that I'm paying for, I can digitally sign up on a sheet and show up a little before I go up and leave after I'm done and go to another open mic. So
Yeah.
way back when that was a thing, I paid money to go to open mics because there were some open mics that you could pay a few bucks and you could do 10 minutes. And
Right.
10 minutes was a lot of time,
Yeah.
to somebody who's starting out in comedy. Um, and then there were some open mics where you would do 2 minutes or 3 minutes. I mean, and that's no time
Right.
at all. I
Right.
mean, it's enough to work out two or three jokes maybe, but yeah, I mean, it's tough.
And in this age of social media, again, like I said, the majority of the stuff that I've seen of yours, I found on TikTok, I found on Facebook Reels.
Yeah.
Um, is that a real challenge? Do you feel like you're constantly having to keep fresh jokes, come up with some new stuff right off the bat? Does it seem like you really can't circulate some of the same jokes over and over anymore because now it's just once it's out there on the internet, then oh, okay,
Yeah.
well, I've already seen it, I don't want, you know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah, it's not like because there was a stretch of time where all you had to do was develop an hour for your entire career and you
Right.
could just perform that for your whole career.
Right.
And that was how you could survive as a stand-up. And that is not a thing that happens anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do have new stuff that I'm working on that I don't put out. But I also have, gosh, I have 2.5 hours of material that it's filmed
Awesome.
that if I'm putting out a minute of material 3 times a week, that's 3 minutes a week, 52 weeks, that's 152 minutes, so that's gonna, that's 2 hours and that's about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I'm also like, I have some jokes that I put out during the holidays and I do sketches and now because I do the weekly wrap ups, one day a week, I'm doing a whole new thing that's new up to that minute. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the difficulty of the volume of stuff that's happening politically is that sometimes I'll write an entire thing to do and I'll have it ready on Thursday, and then all of a sudden Thursday something will happen. That week that you saw me, Thursday was the day that Elon like broke from
Right.
the White House, and so everything became that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I went from having a fully ready to film piece to I got to write this whole thing over,
Well,
you know.
yeah, and I will say I don't think anything that you had done that night that I saw you, I don't think that was anything that I had seen already on
Oh,
socials. Because
interesting.
again,
Yeah.
I have watched you. I mean, I know I went and saw Trey Crowder and the Well Read tour a couple years
Okay.
back, and I remember I had watched a couple of his things on YouTube and stuff, and I
Hmm.
I actually left like kind of disappointed. I was like, shoot, I wish I hadn't seen that because
Yeah.
that was half of his show.
Ah.
And I, while it was still funny, it was just like, oh darn, like I already know these jokes. And you just don't, it's
Yeah.
not the same reaction. I'm glad that I went because I was introduced to the three other comics that he was touring with at the
Hmm.
time that I hadn't known before. And they definitely had their memorable bits as well. But yeah, it was definitely one of those situations where I was like, like if I know I'm gonna go see somebody, maybe stay off their socials for a little while. And just because I think
Yeah.
for an audience, you want it to be new. You want it to, you want to hear it for the first time.
It is interesting. I will say that I perform a bit live differently every time, a little
Okay,
bit.
sure.
And so there's sometimes that I'll play with it. And this comes from the theatrical training is I'm sometimes just going off how the audience is responding to things and
Right,
what's
of
going
course.
on. And
Yeah.
I'm always working on new stuff. Like every time I go and do a big show, there's a chunk of stuff that isn't even ready yet that I'm
Mm,
playing with, you know.
right,
So,
right.
with that, you're seeing a raw version of that even if you do see it, you might not recognize it when it actually hits the,
Right.
filmable status. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's the difficulty with comedy is that people hear a bit a second time and they're like, you did that. And then,
Right.
but with music, it's like, no, I want to hear that thing that I've heard hundreds of thousands of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
and and I think there's a value that people can learn from that is that there are bits that are so musical in their lyrical quality
yeah.
that you can hear it over and over. Like there are bits that I will see on one of the reels, TikTok or something like that I'm like, I know this bit. I just want to watch it again because it's so
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll say too for to that point, I went and saw Taylor Swift on the Eras tour,
Hmm.
but I saw her after the concert film had been released at theaters,
Right.
and I sat there and I was like, "Oh, I almost wish I hadn't seen the concert film because it was almost the same set.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, like, it's had their costume changes and added a couple songs here or there, whatever. But it was right before Tortured Poets came out, so she had pretty much still done the exact same set that you
Yeah.
see in the concert film. So it was one of those that was like, yeah, of course, I'm it's live. I'm with 64,000
Yeah.
people, so it's a
Yeah.
completely different atmosphere and setting. But it was still one of those just like, oh, I ruined it for myself kind of thing, because I truly, it was a fluke that I saw her. I wasn't expecting to go and see her, but it just happened to work out when I was traveling. So, but yeah, I remember leaving that concert and being like, like I almost wish I hadn't done that
Do you
beforehand, but
do
you
you
just didn't
think
know.
do you think that's a factor of living in a world where we're just like constantly seeing new things and we're so our stimulation
Yeah.
is more driven by novelty than it is
It's
familiarity?
funny we talk about this. I'm on a YouTube show as well, so and we talk about this a lot because it's a little bit of both, right? So
Hmm.
everybody keeps talking about how there's nothing original anymore, and they just keep making sequels and remakes, and now Disney's going into the whole live action thing, but it's because people don't have that attention span anymore they also don't want to put themselves out there emotionally and mentally
Hmm.
to try to like invest in something new. So people are going to continue to put their hard-earned dollars towards things that they already know will satisfy them.
Yeah.
So in that regard, that makes sense. But again, like you said, for comedians and for acts, we are still also in that TikTok 30-second reel mindset of like, oh well, this isn't funny or this doesn't stimulate me, and this needs to appeal to me within the first second, or I'm just going to keep
Right.
scrolling. So it's a really strange time that we're all going through right now. And again, I think a lot of that does have to do with our mental. It has to do with the world around us at this time. Like again, we're looking for things that not only make us happy, stimulate us, but that we also really don't have to invest a lot of brain power in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a really, really strange kind of problem for people to have. So again, so people like yourself, you're forced to kind of come up with new stuff and be original and off the cuff fairly regularly.
Hmm.
Whereas, Hollywood, they're just keep making stuff we're gonna
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and that's gonna have good merch. I mean, Lord knows AMC's got me with those damn popcorn buckets time and time again. But yeah, but I don't know that I would want to see the same comedy show over and over. There are some classics, like Sinbad's Brain Dead is one of my favorite
Hmm.
stand-up shows of all time. It's just that's for me, it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And like, I can rewatch Chris Rock over and over again, that kind of
Right.
thing. But it's certainly, I think you have to be well established. You have to have that really well balanced, you've got to have everything all buttoned up on a show like that
Hmm.
to get people to keep coming back for more. So it's yeah, it's wild, but I'm really impressed that you are not only like you said, 15 shows over the weekend, for goodness sakes. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, are you getting bored? Like, do you get tired of hearing yourself? Or, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, you've got to, I think you got to treat everything in on stage unless you're being filmed or unless you're auditioning for something. I feel like everything on stage is a workout. So you have to go
mm,
into it saying, yeah, I've worked my chest before, but I still need to work my chest. So you have to
yeah,
just go into it and say, this, look, I worked this bit, but this is what I'm looking to get out of it. This is what I'm trying to figure out. This, I'm going to change this phrasing slightly, or I'm going to lead in with this. I'm going to go into it with a different bit, see if I can make something flow better. Every time you go on stage, I feel like there's a level of it that you have to be challenging yourself. Like you
yeah.
you you have to be working on something.
Well, and
So
you don't want it to be routine for you either. You don't want to get sick of your own
right.
saying the same joke over and over again. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know bands have experienced that where we're not doing
Hmm.
this song anymore on
Yeah.
tour, and so it would make sense that comedians would kind of feel the same way. Like, okay, how many times can I tell that joke?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
and you want to have it done so many times. You want it to be an inordinate number of times simply because you want it to be so rote memory that you don't even have to be thinking about it to tell the joke. You
yeah,
could just start the joke and go through the entire joke and not think for a second about what you're talking about.
yeah,
Um, that's what you want to be able to do so that whatever happens within the construct of a live performance doesn't derail you um or change that. And also you can, if you know it that well like that, you can also play with sensibilities or
hmm,
timing. You can do all sorts of stuff. So
yeah.
like I
Twist some
say,
things
there's
around.
there's a little jazz in there every time where you're playing with some notes that you've never used before.
Yeah. Now, are you touring throughout the country? Are you still kind of mainly on the East Coast? Where can people find you?
I am doing throughout the country. I'm headed to Cleveland this weekend, and I'm going to be in setting up new dates all the time. But I'm going to be in Portland, Oregon. I'm going to be in Texas a couple times. Florida. I'm going to be in Sarasota, Florida. So yeah, I'm setting up a bunch of dates. We're trying to get the tour all
What
coordinated.
what's that like going back to your home state?
I enjoy Texas. I always have a good time. I love Texas. It's
Yeah.
like a part of my fiber of my being.
Well, I
So
would hope so. Yeah. Do you
yeah,
switch up your jokes according to where you are sometimes?
not really. I mean, sometimes, well, like when I went to Aruba, they were like, there's two things you can't do here. They don't want politics and they don't want any jokes about Natalie Holloway. And I'm like,
Oh
well,
my God.
good news about Natalie Holloway. I do not have any material.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's specific, first of
It
all, but
is.
also
It
like,
is.
sheesh. The
It is
fact that they
a
have to
sore
say
spot.
that
Yeah.
tells you what all you need to know right there.
Yes. Yes.
Holy cow. Ugh.
Um, yeah, so there are times where they're like, we don't want this, we don't want that.
Yeah.
And there's audiences you read, like I'll do certain things. where you're like, oh, that joke didn't go, and it feels like it made things tense, so maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'll veer over here. I
Mm-hmm.
am a big fan though of challenging. Like I did this years ago where I had a gay marriage joke.
Okay.
And I was really trying to work it and really, and the key to a good joke is, of course, that you have the punchline, but the beginning key is you want to get as many people into the joke as quickly as you can, because if people are not coming into the joke, they're missing the ride.
Right. Yeah.
So I was telling this joke, and one of my buddies was in the audience. It was in Chicago, I guess. And one of my and so that's sort of a Midwestern, it's not really it's a city, but it's sort of a city slash suburb. And so you get people from lots of different walks of life, lots of different perspectives. And my buddy was sitting behind this guy during that joke, and he's like, oh, he had his arms crossed, and but then he slowly uncrossed his arms, and then he started laughing, and by the end, he was giggling.
Mm.
And so my thing, my dictate every time I tell a joke is give people the most ways in. So I've got trans jokes that trans people should love and people who are anti-trans should laugh at, you know? I mean, that's to me, jokes are the most inclusive thing because it
Mm.
takes you to the core of your humanity.
Yeah.
Laughter is a thing that we all can do, and it is a joyous thing, and it's one of the most human things, but it's also a thing that you can't get to on your own. You
Yeah.
need you need collaboration to laugh.
Yeah.
You need for there to be an inciting event, and when you can be the person in charge of that inciting event, that's sort of magical. So I think there's a big responsibility to say, let's try to get as many people. You don't have to agree with me, but I want you to laugh at me. And so
Yeah.
with stuff, I try to make it where the most people can laugh. And but at the same time, I got to be true to who I am,
Of course.
and I'm not gonna get up there and pretend to not be who I am. So, but I'm not a
Uh,
highly political guy. I just happen to live in a highly political world, and
mm,
I'm just sort of I'm like, well, I'm not moving this way. I'm
right.
just staying where I am,
Yeah.
pointing at what I think is dumb, you know.
Right, right. Well, and I think audiences can sense that as well too when you're being authentic versus when you're just, trying
Yeah.
to put a bit out there and, create some caricature or something of
Yeah.
yourself. Although that does seem to work for some people as well. So it's just I guess it's all a matter of delivery. But you've been in the game for quite some time now. What advice do you have for anybody who might be thinking about doing something like this, pursuing stand up? Is there one thing? Is there a handful of things that they should know right off the bat,
Uh,
or just go out there and start?
if there is anything else you're good at, I would do that instead. Because it's stand up is a wonderful thing, but it is so much work,
Mm,
and in a lot of cases for very little payoff.
yeah, yeah,
And the reason you do it should never be because you want to be famous or because you want to be rich, or the combination or whatever, or because the odds of that happening are low,
mm,
and that's the difficulty with all the entertainment industry. But I remember one day after I'd been acting for a while, I remember thinking, I can't not do this in my life. Like I have to do this. Like this is just a part of who I am. This is part of my soul. If that is why you are doing any artistic pursuit, then do it. Then do
yeah,
it and do it as hardcore as you want. And
yeah,
I think the hardest thing in comedy is combining the craft of writing with the craft of performing and staying true to yourself all at the same time.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
every performance is partially me playing a character and partially me being myself, and partially me telling a story that no matter how anchored it is in reality, is hyperbolized on some level.
Yeah.
So, it's that combination it's a hard mix to get, and I know Nate enough to know that he's one of the best at being, true to his own voice. But he's also a gifted and talented writer and great storyteller.
Yeah.
And he's managed to combine all of those things in this perfect mix for him that's driven by his voice, by his persona.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, and everybody's got different ways of doing that. You look at somebody like George Carlin, you remember his words as much as you remember his performances
Yeah.
sometimes, and
Yeah.
you talk about somebody like Sinbad. Sinbad was a phenomenal writer, but just an insane performer, like just
Yeah.
so good at just being in front of an audience. And there's 1,000 ways to do it, and 1,000 ways to not make a living off of it. And
Right.
those are all good. But but yeah, if you love something, work at it because look, you're gonna you're gonna get fired from jobs you don't like. Why not try some jobs you do like?
Right.
You know?
Well, and again with that, so when you again you got into an engineering job, how far into stand-up comedy were you when you finally said, you know what, I think I can do this full time. I'm gonna quit this job just because I really want to put it in perspective for folks. Like I want people to understand that this is not something that just happens
Oh
overnight.
no, no, no. I was doing stand-up comedy. I was real fortunate. I went through about a decade, a little over a decade of making my living predominantly from being a commercial actor.
Okay.
And so there was a stretch of time where if you saw a commercial that had a car in it, there was like a 1 in 5 shot I was also in that commercial. Like it's just for whatever reason.
I gotta
Yeah.
look this stuff up. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome. That's pretty funny.
So, yeah, I mean, it was great. And I was a spokesperson for Napa Auto Parts for a stretch of time.
Oh,
So,
get out of here.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
I had to shave my mustache. That was an interesting. I had to go no facial hair on that. But there was a stretch of time where I'm getting checks every 2 weeks in the mail because of all the commercial work I had done,
Yeah,
where I'm
that's
like,
great.
oh, this is like I'm working an office job. I'm just getting every 2 weeks, I'm just getting these massive checks. And I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
all right, it's great. So I sort of hit that in an acting standpoint before I hit it in a stand-up comedy standpoint.
Okay.
And the thing is with stand-up comedy, you're not guaranteed your next gig,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so
we're getting close to the end here, but like, how was COVID for you with that?
COVID was actually okay because I was in this perfect place where I was starting to tour a lot, but I was doing a lot of one-off tour stops, and I was working with this guy who was producing a lot of one-offs, and he sort of was at the forefront of Zoom show stuff.
Okay.
And a lot of comics hated the show stuff. And from a pure stand-up comedy perspective, I 100% agree. But what I realized is I was like, I can treat this comedy performance as if it's a podcast about this comedy performance. So I can sit
Okay.
here in this scenario, talk like the way I'm talking to you. I can just sit here and tell you a joke as if it's a story, as if I'm just giving you a quick anecdote about about something that happened, when I flew Spirit Airlines,
Right. Oh gosh.
but that's I realized that, and so I was doing a bunch of corporate. I was doing, sometimes 4 or 5 a day.
Wow.
And
Okay.
all I was doing was going into a bedroom and turning on my screen and doing the performance and then getting a check. And so I made a solid amount of money during COVID just from
Hey,
doing digital performances.
that's
But
outstanding. That's
uh,
great.
I would still prefer if COVID hadn't happened.
Well, yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Roll with the punches. That's a lot of this industry.
For sure, for sure. Well, again, like I said, I had been seeing you so much on TikTok. Was fortunate enough to see you live, and I just had to reach out and just share you with my listeners. So I do appreciate you coming on here. So again, that was
Absolutely.
Jason Salmon. You guys check him out, look him up on socials. You can find out if he's coming to a city near you. But if you're in the East Coast, I'm sure you'll get your opportunity to see him. But Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show. I do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. Thanks.
This was Try Not to Curse, guys, and we will catch you next time.